At 78, I reclaimed my life after decades in a controlling marriage. I never imagined I would feel this alive again. At 78 years old, here I am, breathing deeply and laughing with the lightness of freedom I thought was gone forever. For decades I had been a shadow in my own life, living under my husband's constant demands and criticisms. Each morning I answered to him before I could think of myself. I dressed in the clothes he approved, cooked the meals he wanted, and kept our home spotless just to win a nod of approval. I learned to tiptoe around his moods, and I shrank myself so I wouldn't provoke the slightest outburst. He controlled our money, and he dictated who I could see or even call on the phone. There were no slaps, no obvious bruises, just a steady drip of demeaning words. He said I was too stupid to manage money, too clumsy to cook anything right, and too weak to make decisions. Over the years, his little jokes and corrective suggestions chipped away at me until I started to believe them. I taught myself that I deserved this life of criticism, that I was worthless without him. I remember the exact moment when something inside me cracked. It was a cold November morning, and I was watching the first frost on the garden roses from the kitchen window. I felt a silent rage, realizing my life was shrinking day by day into nothing. I understood that I was almost invisible, a person so afraid to speak that even my children had stopped coming to me with their problems. My thoughts raced. Was this all there was? Would I sleep beside him every night and wake each morning terrified to open my mouth? One day, a radio show was discussing a 70-year-old woman leaving an abusive marriage, and the words, "You deserve happiness," hit my heart like a spark. In that quiet kitchen, with my hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, I whispered to myself, for the first time in decades, that there must be more than this. With trembling resolve, I began to plan my escape. Each night, I lay awake calculating how to save money without being noticed and researching my options. I learned that I didn't have to prove he was at fault to get divorced, because no-fault divorce meant I could simply say it was over. I didn't have to waste years proving abuse he would always deny. I also discovered something astonishing. I was not alone. Divorce among people over 50 has been rising sharply, and for those over 65, the numbers have tripled compared to decades ago. Women my age were reclaiming their lives, no longer shamed into staying silent. That realization steadied me. I wasn't weak, and I wasn't crazy. I was joining others who finally decided they deserved better. When I filed the papers, my hands shook like a child's. He screamed that I was ruining everything, that I would be lonely and miserable. But once the words were said and the forms were signed, something shifted. The tight knot in my chest loosened for the first time in decades. I cried and laughed at the same time. Within days, my insomnia lifted, my appetite returned, and I could taste food again without feeling sick to my stomach. The first weeks alone were disorienting. The house was so quiet that every creak sounded loud. On the second morning, I wore a bright yellow dress I hadn't touched in years because he used to say it was too bold. I danced in the empty kitchen with a mug of coffee, and I didn't care that no one was there to see it. It felt like rebellion. I was finally wearing what I wanted. I took long walks by the river, breathed deeply under autumn leaves, and joined a women's art group at the community center. For the first time in decades, I picked up a paintbrush, and colors spread freely across the canvas. Someone smiled at me and said I had a spark in my eye, and she was right. Therapy helped too. I spoke until the sore in my heart finally bled out. I learned that control, isolation, and gaslighting have a name: emotional abuse. I had suffered it silently. As time passed, I grew calmer, kinder to myself, and stronger than I ever imagined. I met women like me, women who stayed too long, and women who found courage later in life. Some nights are still hard, and memories still surface, but now I have tools. I meditate, I journal, and I listen to myself. I look at my home, my name on the mailbox, and I feel proud. I cook what I want, redecorate without guilt, and go out with friends on weekdays. My daughter once said I was like a butterfly out of a cocoon, and she was right. Looking back, I see what I lost, a lifetime, but I also see what I gained: freedom, peace, and myself. Now I wake up grateful, sip tea in the sunlight, laugh freely, and live fully. If you are listening and you feel stuck, hear me. It is not too late. Not at 40, not at 60, and not at 78. Your life still belongs to you, and choosing yourself is never the wrong decision. At 78, I reclaimed my life, and in doing so, I reclaimed myself.